afternoon, and welcome to today's Industry Week webcast, Putting Customers First, Orchestrate Recalls at Scale, sponsored by Capgemini. My name is Adrienne Salco, and I am Senior Editor with Industry Week. Before we begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you are having audio difficulties or slides are not advancing, simply hit the F5 key to refresh your webcast console. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, press the Help button to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the Maximize icon or by dragging the lower right corner to enlarge the window. We welcome your question during today's event. To submit your questions, simply type them into the Q&A window on the left side of your screen and hit the Submit button. We'll be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation, but please feel free to send in questions at any time. Also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Industry Week website within the next week for you to review. You'll be notified by email when the archive is available. On your console, the Capgemini logo is hot linked, and if you want to visit their website during the webcast, click on the logo and a new window will open, and it will not take you out of the webinar. I would now like to welcome today's speaker. We have with us today Matthew Desmond, who is the Client Partner and Auto Industry Domain Specialist with Capgemini. He is an automotive after-sales and retail business processing expert, leading high-impact teams to provide clients with vision, strategy, planning, and business insights for improved results and digital transformation. He has helped automotive OEMs support after-sales service recall campaigns, including OEM recall business processes, master data, customer care processes, and dealer service experience digital enablement for warranty administrators, service consultants, and service technicians. We also have with us today Spencer Lentz, who is a principal at Capgemini, where he was responsible for growing the portfolio of Capgemini's artificial intelligence, digital process automation, and digital customer experience solutions. Over the past 20 years, he has collaborated with his clients representing the leaders in telecommunications, media, entertainment, automotive, and the manufacturing industries, driving solutions to complex challenges and helping to shape their digital transformation journeys. With that, welcome, Spencer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carolyn. I think I'll keep that introduction. That could come in handy down the road. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon to talk about a very relevant and pervasive problem in the automotive space, which is recall. So we're actually going to start off with a poll question just to get everybody engaged and warmed up. So let's, we'll click into it here. Again, as Carolyn had said, just please select one of the options here for what you feel will be most relevant to your individual company's situation. The question is, how open is your company in using new technology solutions to aid your business processes? And you only get one choice. Okay, hopefully everyone has had a chance to contribute here and submit their answer. We'll go ahead and start to get into the results. So those will be a little bit delayed for those of you dialed in here, so we'll give it some time, but the results are distributed. So first would be, I'm actively looking for a better solution for our business processes. And those folks are in the right place today, and we like that, so that's great. For those that say we're not looking for a technology solution, I think that there's maybe some things of relevance for you to listen to today and part of the discussion, so we certainly welcome you guys to contribute as well. Let's do one more because that was so much fun. Next question. How effective or efficient was your previous recall campaign? So hopefully you don't have to remember too far back, but the last recall campaign that you were involved in, now if you work for an auto company, then maybe in the execution of the recall campaign, and I'm pretty sure most of us have a vehicle. Most of us do. And so if you've been involved in a recall campaign, please choose now. Was it a complete disaster, or was it a piece of cake and smooth sailing? Okay, similarly, I think that we've got enough responses in to go ahead and go into the results. And so we have no complete disasters, which, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But most of you are submitting responses saying it wasn't too bad, or it could use improvement, or a little bumpy. And likely one or two of you has had no problems whatsoever with your recall experiences. So congratulations, and maybe you can give us a call and let us know how we're doing after the discussion here to see if we're on the right track. So let's get into our topic today, and thanks folks for submitting your answers. That's helpful feedback. We're here today to talk about recall. So I think folks are familiar with recall, but we will spend a few minutes to kind of baseline on current state of the industry and defining what a recall is. But what we really want to talk about is how to make the recall experience better. And we'll get to that. We've actually, at Capgemini, built a recall platform that we believe offers quite a bit of value today and has room for improvement and extensions over time. And we can talk about where we see that evolution going. So first, let's talk about the current state. So recall is a big problem, right? It's either you've been impacted or you've managed, or a little bit of both. But one of the interesting things that we found is over the last 30 or so years, the number of recalls coming in exceeds the number of cars being produced. So a study was done, and there's roughly 1,100 recalls per 1,000 cars, meaning that there are multiple recalls for a given car in some circumstances. Now, why is that? Well, we did a little digging, and one reason is, in looking to the root cause, the types of recalls that are seeing the biggest increases are actually systems-based versus manufacturing-based. So what that means is they are more related to the actual components within the vehicle versus individual parts that are produced in individual factories. So thus, when we have a problem with a component, those by nature are more widespread than actually localized to a specific plant where you could take more targeted specific actions. And that trend is going to continue. Cars are obviously becoming increasingly complex. And to answer or respond to that, automakers are basically designing cars so that there is not as much specialization within or in between models, right? So they're using components shared across multiple models, which is great for efficiency. It's problematic when there's a problem with that shared component, meaning that that component would impact a number of models potentially. And I think folks on the phone are probably thinking about airbags right now, and if you're not, then you are now. So airbags is a very classic example of shared across multiple cars. When there's a problem with those, it's a really, really big problem. So more to the why. What we saw in the data is after the economic bubble or housing crisis of 2007, automakers were impacted pretty heavily. Not many people buying new cars after they lost 30 to 40% of their portfolio. So to respond to that, they cut to bare bones, right? So QA budgets were cut, and what we've seen in the data again is nobody's looking to add quality assurance budgets when they're beholden to their shareholders. So those still kind of bare bones QA structures and teams are kind of still, for the most part, in existence that haven't been beefed up to pre-2007 era. I guess, lastly, in this perfect storm of recall, perception becomes reality. So there's actually, for those of you that aren't aware of the Revisionist History podcast, it's excellent. They did one podcast on, I'll call it a certain global automotive manufacturer who had to pay out a $1.3 billion settlement for unintended acceleration. This was, the root cause was problematic, and actually what's pointed out in the podcast is it may not have been an actual defect, but that actually doesn't matter because the perception of customers was that it was, so it was an issue. So more to the point of needing to respond to recalls in a more efficient and effective manner. And then finally, I thought this was interesting. A NADA study showed that every brand is impacted by recalls, but when those that are not known for quality issues, and I think at the top of the chain is Porsche. Porsche has the most to lose, for example, if they were to have a recall issue, because that is considered out of character for that particular brand. So, there's obviously more factors contributing to the growth of recall. I think suffice it to say it's been a problem for the last 30 years. It'll likely be a problem for the next 30, especially when you consider the impact of, when we're all making self-driving cars and the criticality of those components and how complex cars will actually get in the future. So let's keep moving. So this is a bit of a ducks and bunnies view of recall, admittedly. So please, I can hear some eyes rolling on the call here. But let's boil it down and make it real simple. There's a recall issue. The automotive company issues a recall. The campaign starts. And then the hard work begins, essentially. So that red box and the green box on the left-hand side is where a lot of time is spent. The manufacturer is on the hook to make every effort to notify customers. Customers may find it or have the perception that they're being bombarded and there's a lot of noise in this process, and I actually don't know if this is an important one or not. And we'll get into some of those other pain points. And then finally, another complicated step across multiple parties. A dealer actually replaces the parts once that car has been brought to them and the appointment has been scheduled, et cetera, and the individual car subject to that recall is addressed. But there's still a lot of cars typically within one individual recall campaign. And then real quickly, I think folks are fairly aware of this, but just baselining, there are multiple ways where a recall can be issued. It could be customer generated. It could come through NHTSA via a customer complaint, and or it may come from the manufacturer themselves. And actually, an encouraging trend, recent history has shown that manufacturers are doing a much better job of self-identifying recalls, and that is a larger growth area. And the majority of recall issues are now self-identified. Matt, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of the pain points in the current state of recall?
Thanks, Spencer. So some of the current state challenges and pain points are relating to customer to begin with, maybe receiving a recall notice in the mail. What does this mean? What do I have to do? Not really understanding, can I do it now or can I defer it to later? Or you try and attempt to schedule service, but parts aren't available, which can also be frustrating. Or from the manufacturer perspective, you need to coordinate your internal teams. Who are the customers? Who are the vehicles impacted? No one should fall through the cracks, but it's very complicated to orchestrate this. Also, you want to have high compliance with NHTSA as well, and you're frustrated because you want to get to customers as soon as possible. From a dealer perspective, you're frustrated because you want to have the best customer experience, but you're looking to your OEM to provide the best tools to service your customers. You may be wondering, I need parts, I need to get more information about the scope of the recall. Why can't we get ahead of these problems instead of being reactive? And then from a government perspective, we need to have higher compliance for safety for vehicles on the road, but OEMs still struggle to orchestrate all these components to satisfy the recall demands that we have. So all in all, it's orchestration of a very complicated and complex business problem. And in the next slides, we'll talk about some solutions to address these and organize them and use better. Spencer, can I hand off to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. And I do apologize. I think folks have probably been hit with the bugs that are going around. Matt is feeling a little bit under the weather and has been quite a trooper today and supporting us in this webinar. So thank you, Matt, and keep drinking that honey and tea. You've got another slide coming up here. So let's keep moving. So let's talk about. Let's talk about where this could go and what the solution does. So fundamentally, this recall platform that we have built, and the platform we selected is actually from Pega Systems. Folks are likely familiar with that, but if you're not, we're happy to spend more time on that. But Pega Systems has a digital process automation BPM platform that also has AI capabilities. So it is very extensible by nature, and what we loved about it is it can actually embed AI into the process. So this process goes from left-hand side to the right-hand side. So really quickly, it starts with kind of the investigation at the point in time when there may be a recall, and more root cause analysis to be done on what is the scope of this issue, what are the VINs that are impacted, and what am I going to do about it? What is the remediation? Finally, the campaign is created, it's set up, the campaign is launched internally by the manufacturer, who then must orchestrate the corrective activity across the customer, the dealer, and in some cases an outreach agency. So we have fundamentally connected this process through our solution. It offers increased customer experience because it is by nature and by the platform we're using, it is a multi-channel offering, meaning that we can make changes in one spot and have those process changes basically cascade out to mobile form factors, etc. In future releases of the platform, there is hook-ins to social media, so we have the ability to connect into emails, into Twitter feeds, into Facebook, to integrate the social listening aspects and understand or help an automaker, manufacturer understand what is happening in the field to increase the time to actually recognize that there is an issue. On the execution side of the setup and launch of the campaign, this end-to-end view is orchestrating across dealers, suppliers, and customers, giving them a combined view of what is happening and what is the next step that I need to take. And that is done through extension and integration via dealer and or customer and or outreach portals. So these are web pages or apps that the dealer and the outreach agency can log into to understand all of the VINs that are impacted by this, the support documentation, what to do, how to replace it, et cetera, all in one place, greatly simplifying the communication lines. And then finally, we have an overall value proposition of reduced corporate risk, right? The CRO, the Chief Risk Officer, the CEO, actually the CEO as well, the entire C-suite can rest assured that you are having to deal with recalls, but you have a platform in place that is focused on making it as efficiently run as possible, and you know what is happening in the field and if we're ultimately tracking to expectations. So let's dive a little bit deeper. We'll cover this one very quickly, and then we'll open up to some questions. Taking the same process view, essentially on the left-hand side, we would import VINs, and that can be done through an automated fashion, or it can be done kind of by a manual process of uploading the VINs that are impacted. The setup and launch aspects are, again, optional integrations to the warranty system, but essentially this is where your recall campaign orchestrator would be configuring the steps required, the remediation, the dealers to be sent this out to, this goes out to, and the VINs subject to this recall. And then finally, the campaign is launched, and then it goes into the hard part, which is managing and orchestrating across the outreach for the number of times that a customer needs to be communicated to in the right way at the right time, and then iterating through that until ultimately the campaign is complete. Let's pause a bit for, Tony, are there any questions that we need to answer now, or should we go ahead and keep going? I haven't been keeping an eye on Q&A.
Yes, so the first question that has come through is, does your solution work for recalls other than automotive? Very
good question. So yes, is the short answer. This solution has been deployed within automotive. That said, it is extensible to really any manufacturing activity, to the extent that if there is a recall campaign involved, in other words, the value of the product is over a threshold where it makes sense to track it, and two, the impact of failure is detrimental to the company, brand, and or the customer, so it is in their best interest to track it. So pervasive in manufacturing, also in the life sciences and medical devices. It is. Let me talk a little bit broadly about the changes that would need to be made. So obviously on the identification side and investigation side, that would need to be customized or tailored more specifically to the unique identifiers associated to that individual manufacturer and or that industry by chance. That said, there still is this overarching campaign that needs to be managed across multiple parties. There's generally a recall or an owning organization internally within the company that is managing and orchestrating this entire process. And then there are third parties, certainly. Now, it may not be a dealer necessarily or an outreach agency, but there are going to be obviously customers impacted, and there generally is some third party in the middle between manufacturing and ultimate receipt by the customer that needs to be looped into what this process is. What I will say is, because we base this off of the Pega platform, for those that aren't familiar, Pega makes it very easy and in a low-code environment to make rapid changes to the solution to really tailor it or customize it to your specific problem set. So let's talk a little bit about the solution architecture. So let's start at the top. We have, as I had mentioned before, out-of-the-box capability to do kind of end-to-end orchestration in a mobile or web kind of footprint, if you will. Because we've chosen Pega, those capabilities and those interfaces are by default also available in a mobile form factor. There is some customization that is required, but we could easily expose these capabilities into already existing assets that a company may have. In essence, if you have a website, which almost every company does, or if you have a mobile app, it's very easy for us to integrate to that and embed the portions of this process that are required, be you a customer or be you a dealer or an outreach agency. So it's a very extensible platform. From a process management perspective, it has core capabilities around campaign setup and administration, the iterative process for outreach. Essentially, each one of the individual cars that is impacted by this becomes a case to be resolved, right? So all those cases will not have to follow the same path, and the case is the master of that individual vehicle and that that owner combination, and that process to actually track down the customer, which is one of the hardest parts of the recall process, is orchestrated and monitored. You can set SLAs on that. You can specify a treatment path for individual customers. You can be cognizant of preferences for how the customer may want to be contacted via email or via phone or via text. So it is very flexible in how that process can work. And then finally, it is orchestrated at the top level with those SLAs, as well as very granular reporting and dashboards to understand how the process is progressing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Hey, Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about where we see this going and where we see recall evolving?
Thanks, Spencer. So the evolution is really a fully connected experience. So what this means is addressing each of the prior pain points and orchestrating these different processes and data to not only meet but exceed customer expectations so we can make out of that recall experience a benefit rather than an inconvenience. From a consumer perspective, looking at the channels for mobile or in-car, we need to be able to provide recall notifications on any device, anytime. So being able to listen to customers to say, talk to me via text, talk to me via email, maybe a phone call, being fine-tuned to those communication preferences to meet customers' needs for communication, in addition to the required snail mail in the mailbox from the government. Give proactive options for service scheduling so you can contact customers to let them know where dealers have parts to do the recall service and help them with that process proactively. That can sometimes be a struggle. And the ability for customers to engage with experts. What does this recall mean? Do I really need to do it? Of course, all need to be done, but some may be more higher priority than others, especially safety, which kind of leads us into social media listening. So having active agents listening to the channels on behalf of the OEM and also dealers to engage customers, to understand the true customer sentiment and leverage that live to help us fine-tune the process. Take advantage of the platform as another means to communicate information to customers, to channel them to a dealer that can service their needs and ensure that they understand the priority and the length of time required to have the work done. Moving on from social media listening to outreach integration, this is really from the manufacturer. So coming from the factory out to the world, really working with the solution that Spencer's given us excellent details about to orchestrate the various processes. So we're talking about master data, vehicle build, parts, regionality, after-sales service technical notifications for customers, technical notifications for technicians. All of that has to be seamlessly integrated, and the solution that we're discussing can enable that. So it makes it much more seamless and less prone to error, and also can increase or accelerate the ability of the OEM to get the information out to recipients. Apologize for my voice. But it also helps us get a tighter integration of internal processes to try and reduce lag, and can also help us improve our parts forecasting to get parts out in the field as soon as possible, and also to give knowledge to parts distribution centers and dealers so they can communicate with their customers about part availability. And then the last piece would be the dealer integration. For the franchise dealer model, dealers are looking for better solutions that provide more information faster, more accuracy in when parts will be available and how many, so they can book customers and contact their customers to reassure them that their service appointment will take place. And it will also improve the dealer experience too by providing additional tools to help them not only speak just about the recall, but the larger customer engagement to once again try and make an experience that could be an inconvenience a benefit. Back to you, Spencer.
Thank you so much, Matt. While that slide is coming up here, I do want to reach out to the group that's listening here. If you do have questions, please do submit those. We're about wrapped up, and we'd like to have all of your questions in, and we'll get to them. It looks like we're going to have a decent amount of time here at the back end of the discussion here to talk through those questions. So please submit your question now. In the meantime, let's zoom in a little bit more on this concept of insight to action and how social media listening can be beneficial and how it might work in this type of scenario. So at the highest level, it is really three basic steps: listen, analyze, and act. And again, hitting on the powers of the platform that we've built with the embedded AI capabilities that we have native to Pega, as well as the connected action that comes with the platform. This is actually very easy to do. So from a social monitoring perspective, we are hooked into Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We can customize and tailor that in such a way that that can go directly to those sites, or if you have existing initiatives or efforts around this activity or social listening, we can certainly have those discussions and get those included as part of the solution. But the key is to reduce the time from an incident to when you're aware of it and increase your awareness. The early warning signs are out there. It's just whether companies can detect them and correlate those into meaningful action, because there are breadcrumbs everywhere, but it takes more sophisticated tools than any social monitoring team to be able to correlate those into something meaningful for the company. Once that listening is in place, you can actually take that and do some enrichment and understand and paint a larger picture. So in essence, it does take some work to correlate the data that is coming in through unstructured feeds such as Twitter or Facebook. So it is not an exact science, and there may be some manual steps involved in correlating and identifying what the customer is to VIN. But once that relationship is then established, you can start to piece together trends across VINs or components, and that may require some additional discovery. What I will also say is in this process, many companies have already invested in this from an analytics perspective. Pega makes it easy to integrate those and sometimes data models. It is fully compliant with, I think, 14 different PML languages. So if you have a data scientist team that is already looking at this type of problem, this platform can hook right into that and start to generate and incorporate some of those insights that that team has developed, and then more importantly, take the corrective action. So the action is essentially what we've talked about all along. It is really in the creation of the campaign and orchestration across with the overall governance and SLA structure in place to make sure that you're making the right decisions and that you as an automotive company are protecting the brand and resolving this recall experience as painlessly as possible. So in summary, and then we'll hop over to questions. So again, get your questions in if you have those. Three key tenets here to talk about on why we believe this is a valuable platform for the automotive industry. Fundamentally, we think we have a very strong start into what can be, a fully integrated, fully connected, harmonious recall process. Because let's face the facts, recall is not going away. It's going to only probably get more complicated as we have autos do more on customers' behalf and customers themselves or drivers do less and less over the next decade. The core of the architecture is really that automation layer where you're managing the workflow across distributed parties, connecting and breaking down those silos across the customer, across the dealer, and outreach agencies, and making what could be a terrible experience just a little bit better. And then finally, as I referred to, this is the step in the right direction. We do not believe we have the problem completely solved necessarily, and we also understand that recall has different variants depending on which company you're working with, or what your unique problems are. We do have successful implementations, and this has worked, but we understand that customers and more want more bespoke solutions. The platform makes it very easy to customize and make a specific tailored solution unique to your company, be you an automotive manufacturer, a parts supplier, or you're in the manufacturing space looking for a better way to do recalls on your valuable assets. And it looks like we have a couple of questions.
Yes, I'll go ahead and read the questions. I wanted to ask the audience while we are answering these questions to please take a moment to complete the feedback form that appears on the left side of the screen. This question is, can the Capgemini Pega solution integrate into my existing systems? We have a lot of investments in our current tools and want to leverage them, but we don't have all the capability we need.
It's a great question, and absolutely, I alluded to this throughout the presentation, but we understand that recall was not recently invented, and many customers have significant investments in this space. On the left-hand side or the entry side, there is out-of-the-box integration to warranty systems, unique to, and we can tailor those to your existing systems very easily. As far as the other needs, the data enrichment that has to occur from a VIN to who the customer owner is, and if you have to dip into an ERP or a CRM system, that again is very easily to do. Finally, we also have the capability, because we are using Pega as a platform, to do robotic type integration where interfaces may not already exist. So if you have a smaller database that is used to do this, it is very easy for us to integrate to that and bring that data into the fold to make better decisions and drive better action.
Okay, there's another question. There's so many processes to integrate, from customer engagement to engineering to after sales to dealers and the government. This seems like a lot for one solution to do. Could you talk about that?
That is the spirit that, yeah, I totally agree with that statement. This is not positioned to be a silver bullet for recall, and I hope I was clear on that. What we do see is this is actually, it is an end-to-end process that covers the towers that I discussed. It will connect a customer. It will bring in the dealer, the recall operations team, and an outreach agency. We have and are on the roadmap that we're developing to direct integration to governing bodies such as NHTSA. That's not included in the solution right now, but those are certainly conversations that we want to have and how to do that in a way that obviously is helpful for the client, but also over time, once companies are onboarded onto this platform, those native capabilities would be part of the framework as future upgrades are made, and those benefits are kind of seen by all of those on the platform.
Okay, this next question is why you chose Pega as the basis for your recall solution.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we Capgemini have a DCX practice that actually it works with and we support a number of platforms. We chose Pega because we feel strongly in the company's roadmap and focus to this market. Additionally, we also, and I alluded to this in the kickoff, what's unique about Pega, and you've seen kind of me toggle back and forth between process automation use cases and AI and decisioning use cases. I've also mentioned robotics. Pega is really the only product out there, and we spent a lot of time looking at this, that offers all of those capabilities natively. So while something may not be required today, there is that future requirement out there. Pega is a company that is going to have those capabilities both now and into the future, and will always be part of their upgrade roadmap. And by offering it natively, it is something that can be added very quickly and will always be on that upgrade roadmap versus more brittle extensions out to third-party tools that can break as you mature your solution over time.
Okay, the next question is, what were the main data quality issues you run into in terms of duplication or missing information, and then how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think, Matt, this might be one you could take a stab at.
Sure. So the main data quality issues in the implementation that I supported of the solution was the duplicate data or missing data from in this particular OEM. Their vehicles were engineered and designed in one country, and they were sold and serviced in the North American hemisphere. So the challenges we had was that master engineering data would periodically omit VINs, or they would be missing VINs depending upon the country. We did an implementation for about 30 countries. And so when that data came over, we had to work with our business subject matter experts to get some data quality business rules that we would run against the data to try and flag the missing data and, of course, the duplicate data before we loaded it into the system. But the nicest aspect of the solution was that we had to work to kind of get some intelligence from our SMEs to identify, what to look for in the data to get it to be as high quality as possible. But the tool itself also helped us with some of that in terms of writing business rules from a business process perspective. So the higher the data quality, the more accurate the output. But some of the tools that we used were built into the solution. Some were separate third-party tools. But we had to have a lot of engagement with the subject matter experts to really understand, what is a quality data set, and make sure that the solution understood that. So when the merges were done for the vehicles, the parts, and the bulletins, we had a very high rate of success and quality. Thanks, Spencer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That's great.
The next question is, how can artificial intelligence help with recalls? Is it going to help us become more proactive, and is there something more to learn with AI?
It's a very good question. I think there's another one in the question log that's kind of related to this. So let me talk broadly about both. So again, because there is native capabilities around AI, the capability is there. What the challenge with AI is the learning process that must take place, and that unfortunately is unique to each individual set of customers and ecosystem and decisions to be made. The way that it works is when you're training this on a certain data set, you're able to define what are the key data parameters that I need to look at. You can support up to a couple hundred. We recommend a happy zone of roughly 150 to up to 300 different parameters that you can look at in order to influence or inform on decisions. But there's a training data set that needs to be ran through that, right? This requires time for the AI to actually understand what has happened historically and how do I apply those lessons moving forward. You really can't train generally. You must train specifically in order for the tool to be honed in and keyed into a unique set of car makes and models as well as the customer base. But that said, we've gone as far as we can to prepare for a successful decision engine going into a client environment or a client use case that is to be considered. And hopefully that makes sense. If not, then happy to answer a follow-up question or have a separate conversation around that.
Okay, there's another question about what is the average implementation time for the solution?
That's a great question. So let me cover it kind of at a general level, and then Matt, you can talk specifically, share some battle stories as well. These are fast implementations, roughly speaking. These are not massive transformations. We're in 2020 now. The appetite for catastrophic change into organizations is not high, right? So these are $1 to $2 million type implementation costs, maybe up to 3 to 4. I think our initial implementation on which this is based was actually lower than that. In terms of go live or how long it would take, it's certainly less than a year. What we would typically want to do is hone in on the critical pain points and introduce functionality within the first 3 months of an initiative to start to deliver value back to the organization. We could come in and without much customization overlay this to existing processes fairly confidently within 1 quarter's worth of work, right? So, and that's just a general operating statement because there is a high degree of similarity on what this workflow entails. Agnostic of the individual company that you're talking about, there is a great amount of acceleration in just that upfront implementation where you're automatically seeing value, you're getting the reporting, you're getting the workflow, you're getting the dashboards, and you have a layer in place by which you can expand and add additional functionality that would not be covered as part of the out-of-box solution.
Yeah, Spencer, if I could add, I would agree to that. I would just add that, when we ask that question, I'm very much in line with Spencer's recommendation. That's very much the experience I had implementing the solution at a major North American auto OEM. But the really key thing would be the ability to integrate with the master systems of record to get data into the platform. That is a dependency we would work on with our client, but the faster that we can get that integrated data, that can accelerate things significantly. That's probably one of the biggest dependencies. And I would also agree that in terms of a timeline, this is something definitely would be probably less than a year. It does depend upon the scope, but think of like the North American market, it seems about the right fit. But the faster the master data can be integrated, the processes are already there. And to that point, it's really just, loading the data, UAT testing and doing the end-to-end. So definitely something that is not incredibly complex, spanning multiple years. This is something I'd say that's leaner, it's more nimble, and it can fill in the gaps in some of your existing platforms and help just orchestrate the end-to-end more efficiently. Thanks, Spencer.
Okay, next question. Does this solution have any problems being compatible with mainframes, SAP, or custom warranty platforms? Our current tools have significant gaps. Can this solution bridge them, or will we replace some of our existing systems of record?
Spencer, would you like me to get that one? So basically,
sorry, Matt. Yeah, go ahead. I was talking on mute, but you go ahead and fill that one.
No problem. I'll start and I'll hand it off because you're our expert on the solution platform. But I would say the short answer is yes. Regardless of the backend system of record, this is really about data integration. So imagine the solution as sort of fitting elegantly in between the systems that you have now, systems that store warranty claim, systems that have records of customer information, master data for vehicles, master bills of material, parts lists, bulletins. It is able to dip into all of them. So there really, at least so far, there really isn't a barrier to integration. It's really just about being able to have an ability to integrate with those systems to bring the data into the solution. And then I'll hand off to Spencer.
Yeah, well done, Matt. I would add that that's again one of the leading inputs the decision to land on Pega for this. Pega, as a no-code platform, makes it exceptionally easy to define new interfaces, essentially doing so in an IDE without having to write code. And honestly, changing integration protocols between one another is a configuration item without having to write code. So once you change it, you're able to compile, if you will, and you can change integration formats or specs. Even when there are not, let's say that no one has ever integrated to this application that we need to get data out of. Probably not likely in 2020 that you would just discover a new integration need for this specific to recall, but even if you were to, we have a number of other options we can employ. Direct SQL query of tables is easy to do. Additionally, I referred to the robotics capabilities. So we're able to essentially log into an application as if we were a real user doing it, copy that data, and then use that in the process as it is flowing. And that can be done on the server side or a client side. More than likely it would be done on the server side, unbeknownst to who was executing the process. So again, short answer, as Matt succinctly said, yes.
Okay, next question. Do you download data from NISTA database for trend analytics?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so the last customer I was at, I can't share too much about what we did, but NHTSA, yes, and that's just one of a few sources that were used to get our arms around, how are we doing, right, in terms of, penetration for campaigns, for execution of campaigns, very, very critical information. But yes, we did, and that was one of several sources that were used to get that business intelligence.
Okay, another question. I read this as a management tool for a recall process. However, does this combine data for recall decisions?
I'll take that one. Yes. So I think we touched upon this one. And Mark, if you're not comfortable with his answer, ask another one. But let me address it again. Short answer is yes. And I kind of referred to this as the foundational orchestration layer is there and it's out of the box. We've made references to the upfront process around, the VIN upload and, kind of the NHTSA data coming in. We've also made some reference to, on the back end in the customer treatment area, the value in having customer contact preferences and things like that, or, next best action for an outreach agent included. I've also alluded to there is kind of a capability and then the process by which you would develop your own model that is effective for your client implementation. So the capability exists, the framework exists. The specific steps will take some time, soak time, if you will, at a client implementation where we can look historically at the data, bring that into the environment, and get at least some understanding of what the base parameters are that need to be looked at, as well as the scenarios that need to be driven. We have kind of those out of the box, but the specifics of the AI that are applied to an individual client site are unique to that individual use case.
Yeah, and Spencer, if I could just add to that, another example of an implementation of the client. Some of the decisions that you can make more intelligently will be based upon the master data you load in the system. I mean, there's many aspects of decision making, but some should just be, what is our impacted population? What are the emission codes that need to be included? Is it 2-door, 4-door hatchback? When you bring that information into the platform, you suddenly very quickly are able to make decisions about, that's a more accurate population of vehicles that are impacted. I have a better idea about the parts I need to forecast. Whereas doing that separately in separate tools, not being integrated, you can arrive at the same outcome, but with the solution we're describing, it's faster and it's more accurate. So yeah, absolutely, it will help, I would say, accelerate the decision-making process and also help increase the quality of the decision-making process. This specific example, though, is talking about, when a recall is going to happen, and you need to get quick answers about how to plan and prepare for it, for doing a campaign and all the steps related to bringing it to the field and to customers. Thanks, Spencer.
Okay, it looks like we've answered all the audience questions, so I'd like to thank our speakers, Matt Desmond and Spencer Lentz, and our sponsor, Capgemini. As a reminder, if you're registered as a group, please add the names and emails of all in attendance on the exit survey. On behalf of IndustryWeek, have a productive remainder of the day.